Hey guys, welcome back to Advanced Photo Manipulation Movie Poster Effects. My name is Kirk Nelson, and we find ourselves now on lesson number 5. And in this lesson, we will talk about the workflow for developing the mechanical parts of our giant fighting robot. So here is where we last left our project. In lesson 4, we've prepared the pose of the figure of this big robot model. And in this lesson, we're going to review how to add some mechanical looking parts to it. Now I'm going to focus on this right leg of the robot. That's the robot's right leg, the one that's to our left. In fact, I think I actually want to adjust the shape of that a little more. I think the foot here seems a little bit squashed. So I'm actually going to just adjust this a little bit more. Okay. And then I'm going to further segregate this right leg into the upper and lower leg parts. And I'm also going to take the foot and make it its own part too. So this is done just using the regular selection tool like we've done in the past. So that's going to be the upper leg. And then by default, because we cut that upper leg portion off, the lower leg is already there. We just need to cut at the ankle so that the foot is separate. So now we've got all three of these elements on their own. Now the whole reason for isolating these individual pieces of the leg is so that they can serve easily as a base to clip the mechanical photos onto. So we've got these two mechanical photos open, the 381 and 384. And we will use elements from both of these to create the mechanical pieces that comprise the leg. So let's start with the lower portion of this leg. That's really the calf, and it's even got the knee portion in there. But right now we're concerned mostly with this lower calf area. So I'm going to use this photo here, the 0381, and I'm going to just drag it over and deposit it directly on top. Now it comes in really, really large, and that's fine because we're going to scale it down. Now I like to name the layers where I got them from because it makes it easier for me to track it down later on. Another method for doing this would be to use the file place command, because then you can just select the photo and it brings it in automatically and actually places it as a smart object and gives it the name of the file, which is not a bad idea at all. In fact, a lot of times it's a good idea to even convert these to smart objects before you start transforming them. That way you can always get back to the high resolution version without any problem. So for right now, I'm going to clip this mechanical image to the lower leg. And I do that by holding down the Alt key and mousing right between these two layers until you see the cursor change to that block with the down arrow. You click there and it clips it to that bottom leg. Now I was holding the Alt key because I'm using a PC. If you're using a Mac, that would be the Option key. So now I can go in and begin transforming this mechanical layer to fit onto that leg. Another good thing about it being a smart object is that you can use the warp command to add some curve to it if you want. And you can always get that back. It's a non-destructive transformation then. Now I do intend for this to not cover the knee area there. So I could actually clip that knee out into its own individual piece. Or I can just warp my way around it, knowing that I'm going to use some other elements for the knee. Now, you're noticing that this has a very distinctive color to it because the source image itself had almost a greenish gray, kind of a rusted color to it. And you may already see down the road how this could be a problem, especially if we're using source images from several different mechanical things, where when you combine them all together, you could get several different color hues built into this one uniform figure. And that's really not what we want. We want it all to be a consistent coloring. So the way to deal with this is to take the blending mode for this mechanical layer and change it to luminosity. And that's going to allow what's behind that layer, which at the time being is this lit slate gray model piece, and the blend mode lets that color come through using only the luminous values of this layer to determine the darkness of it. Okay, so once we have that in place, we want to make sure that the lighting remains consistent. Now, I know the source photos already have some lighting built into it, and it's going to be nearly impossible to get that lighting to completely match up. So we have to sort of cheat it. And the way to do that is to make another copy of that base element there. This is the regular slate gray piece from that model. Clip that one in and set it to overlay. You see how that changes the lighting of that element so that it now matches the lighting of the base model, which is why it was so important when we were creating the photos for this base model that we were careful to try to get the lighting to match up with the environment the best we could. Okay, so now what do we do when we don't want to use an entire photo as the mechanical portion of an element? What if we just want to use a portion of it? Such as, in this case here, I don't want this entire engine to be part of that upper leg, although that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. It could sort of work out pretty well. But let's say I wanted to use just this long element right here. Well, then you have to create a selection of it. And you could select it using the quick selection tool if you want. I actually prefer to use the notorious pen tool. I find the selection, especially for mechanical parts, tends to be much more reliable. And I tend to trust my own eye to create the selection edge more so than I trust the algorithm built into the quick selection tool. And once your selection is complete with that pen, you can go to the paths channel. And sometimes it's good to keep this as a path. By the way, once you create a path like this, you can save the JPEG again and it will still retain the path information. So once you create a complex, lengthy, hard to select path, don't throw it away. Just rename it in the paths panel and hold on to it by saving that JPEG again. So regardless of that, I'm going to control or command click that thumbnail to create that selection. And then from here, just copy that to its own layer. Now I do want to get rid of this name that's in here. So that's as simple as selecting the whole thing and using our content aware fill. Okay, so now we will take this piece and drag it over and position it over that thigh area, and then begin to position this into place. Now, I'm not going to clip this portion to that thigh area here because I kind of want to build out beyond that curved thigh portion. I don't want it to be hidden by that. I'd like this to look like it has some mechanical areas kind of protruding from the model there. But I will change this to luminosity. And to my eye, that's looking a little bit bright. So I'm going to use a levels command to darken it down a little bit. And then go further to scale it in. Okay. So that's the basic routine there. I'm going to do exactly that same thing to copy another portion of this photo because I want this side element here to be on the side of his leg. And then I'll probably just make another copy of this one to go on the inside there. Place it below that first one and just start moving that around too. Okay, so here we've got our leg plating positioned in. And just for the sake of time, I've also included some of the other elements that I've cut out from this very file here. For instance, the hip joint. You can see that that came from this portion of it right here. And I also added some additional mechanical elements next to the hip joint. That's from this lower part down here. Just folded that behind the leg plating. And I also used those same elements turned and twisted to form the knee. And I've grouped this entire thing together. And now we want the lower leg area to be able to show through. So I will create a mask next to that right thigh area. and just mask out the portion that I think should be hidden. Okay, so that's the basic workflow in creating the mechanical elements of one of the legs. Now, I'm not going to go through and show you the exact click for the entire robot because that would take way too long. Do expect to spend a lot of time assembling these different photographic elements to create the entire structure of the figure. I will show you which elements I used where, but I'm not going to show you exactly how I transformed each and every little pixel into place. But it should be fairly obvious when you see where the source photos come from and then where they get applied to the overall figure. So that brings lesson 5 to an end. Now be sure to check back with lesson 6, where we will start creating some of the armor shell that goes around this robot and conceals some of those fragile circuitry and mechanical areas.